A mysterious warning, a plane seconds away from disaster, and a president who decided to trust a mad woman. This is not the story you expect. Stay with us as we unravel how one moment of chaos averted one of Burkina Faso's greatest tragedies. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. The sun was rising over Ouagadougou Airport, bathed in the morning's muted gold. The president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, was preparing to board his aircraft for a high-stakes summit, one that couldn't afford delays. On the runway, security moved briskly, the distant hum of jet engines blending with the buzz of hurried preparations. But just as the president's convoy arrived at the airstrip, the calm broke. A figure appeared darting across the tarmac. Barefoot and wearing tattered clothing, she surged forward with no regard for the armed personnel shouting at her to stop. Her frayed scarf flapped in the wind as she screamed at the top of her voice. "There will be blood in the sky!" Her words were frantic, jarring, and loud enough to cut through the noisy commotion of pre-flight preparations. The guards froze for a moment, visibly struck by the sheer audacity of what they were witnessing. A secure runway, mere moments before takeoff, had been breached. It took seconds for the security team to recover from their shock. They rushed toward her, expecting to drag her away immediately, but before they could proceed, something unexpected happened. Ibrahim Traoré raised his hand, signaling them to stop. His reaction seemed almost instinctive, as if he had already decided she wasn't just another intruder. The woman collapsed to her knees as the guards halted. Her voice strained as she repeated, "It's not safe. Don't let the plane take off." Wind pushed the words toward the group gathered under the aircraft's wings. The disorder spread quickly. Several aides looked at one another, unsure whether to act or stay still. Soldiers gripped their weapons, their gazes darting between the woman and their commander. Who was this person? And why, of all places and moments, would she appear here? Whispers rustled through the small crowd surrounding the convoy. To them, she looked like someone with nothing left. Her clothing, a coarse, oversized shirt, hung off her shoulders. Her thin, raw feet were caked with dust, hinting she'd walked some unthinkable distance. To the crowd, everything about her screamed another word: madwoman. But there was uncertainty on Traoré's face. This was a man about to leave his country in a tense political climate. He had spent months navigating instability and threats, and every minute mattered today. Still, he approached her, speaking softly but urgently. Witnesses later recalled how calm he seemed. Not dismissive, but curious. She kept insisting, hands gripping the ground. "You must trust me. Blood will fall. Don't fly." Her desperation was raw, unshakable. Inside the hangar, voices raised in confusion. The airport director, visibly upset, urged the president to disregard her and continue his plan. "We can't stop for everyone shouting nonsense," someone muttered. The jet engines had already begun to roar. Aides flanked the air stairs, waiting for Traoré to move. But the moment stretched unnervingly long. Instead of turning toward the waiting plane, he stopped in his tracks. "Stay the flight and check it. Every detail," he finally ordered. His tone left no room for argument. There was an audible ripple of shock. State officials murmured anxiously, while civilian onlookers gathered near the fences craned their necks, trying to make sense of the delayed departure. Some shook their heads, muttering that this would spark criticism. How could the president, a man known for his sharp judgment, give weight to the pleading of someone like her? Wasn't this a security failure? Or worse, a sign of recklessness? And yet others began to wonder if there was more to her words than empty panic. The president's trust in that frail figure on the tarmac, though foolish to some, completely shifted the day's course. Instead of lifting off into the skies, the plane remained grounded. The crowd braced themselves, some anticipating humiliation, some fearing disaster. Whatever happened next would be crucial. What compelled Traoré to believe her? And what would stay them? This strange interruption, it appeared, was just the beginning. The woman who had thrown the airport into chaos that morning was not a nameless stranger or a mere figure from the crowd. Her name was Dr. Mariam Zongo, though few in Burkina Faso would have recognized her in that moment. Years ago, she had been a respected aviation safety expert. She had studied abroad, earning distinctions and participating on international aviation panels. Her career, once full of promise, had positioned her as a vital voice in ensuring air travel safety. But that voice had been silenced long ago, and the Dr. Zongo standing barefoot on the tarmac was a far cry from the sharp, poised professional she had once been. The turning point in her life was devastating. Years earlier, her husband and young daughter boarded an aircraft she had long warned was unsafe. As a safety expert, Miriam had raised concerns about repeated mechanical issues, specifically with routine maintenance protocols and engine faults on certain aircraft. But her warnings were brushed aside. She was told her assessments were overly cautious and impractical for an industry that prided itself on efficiency. These dismissals came from people she had once considered colleagues and allies. When the crash happened, killing everyone on board, her warnings were not just proved correct, they haunted her. Her grief was worsened by the very systems she trusted. After the crash, reminders of her family's death flooded the headlines, but no accountability followed. Instead of being supported, Miriam found herself shut out. The investigation was cursory, and her attempts to push for stricter regulations were labeled as obsessive. Some within her professional circle began to see her behavior as erratic, and in the months that followed, she was let go from her position under vague claims of unsuitability. Officially, she was a disgraced authority in aviation. Unofficially, she was a broken woman with no family, no career, and no credibility. Life after that unraveling was harsh. Unable to overcome her grief, Miriam wandered through various towns until she faded from nearly every professional and social circle she had once belonged to. Locals saw her as nothing more than another homeless figure, muttering to herself and rambling about the skies. But those closest to her decline, and a handful of those who stopped to listen, noticed a pattern in what she said. She began to speak of ominous dreams, moments of choking fear, and strange signs she believed were warnings about future crashes. "I saw the same signs, the same noise, the same dream," she'd whisper, her voice trembling. It was the phrase she repeated over and over, a chilling echo of what had haunted her since the loss of her family. Yet no one took her seriously. Few connected the mad woman on the streets with the highly educated aviation expert she had once been. She was reduced in the eyes of society, written off as a tragedy that spiraled into delusion. Many dismissed her warnings as the ranting of someone consumed by grief, disconnected from reality. But what they failed to understand was that her words, while steeped in pain, were grounded in expertise. She wasn't imagining the patterns she spoke of. She was seeing what others weren't taught to look for. That morning at the airport, her desperation had reached its peak. Those minutes she spent shouting on the tarmac weren't born of instinct alone. For days leading up to the president's flight, she had been fixated on the same recurring dream. She saw a plane erupting in flames somewhere high in the sky. In her mind, the connections flooded back, the unfamiliar noises, the metallic hums she claimed to recognize from before her family's crash, the overwhelming sense that history was repeating itself. These weren't ramblings. They were pieces of a puzzle she struggled to make others see. It wasn't just her knowledge of aviation that had brought her to that moment. It was everything she'd lost to the indifference of others. Her warnings had been ignored once before, and it had cost her everything. This time, standing alone barefoot on asphalt, she had no credentials or title to use as proof of her expertise. She only had her insistence, her voice, and a faint hope that someone might finally listen. Against all odds, someone did. The decision to delay the flight triggered immediate backlash behind the scenes. The airport director openly questioned President Traoré's reasoning, arguing the delay could disrupt international relations and security procedures. But the president overruled all objections, insisting the engineers perform a thorough check of the aircraft. For the ground crew, the command was clear. Their job wasn't to debate, but to ensure the plane's safety. Meanwhile, security escorted the woman, still clutching the ground moments earlier, away from the runway. Inside the hangar, tension hung heavy. The engineers approached the jet cautiously. To the untrained eye, everything appeared ordinary. The engines hummed softly in their pre-flight state, giving no indication of an issue. On the surface, the aircraft now symbolized the brewing division among the gathered crowd. Some believed this delay was an embarrassing overreaction, while others watched nervously, unable to dismiss the eerie confidence of the woman's earlier warnings. The engineers began by examining the engine valves, inspecting components that might typically go unchecked under normal circumstances. One by one, they worked around the left engine, opening panels, running diagnostics, and poring over every detail. For a while, there was nothing unusual to report. Experts on the tarmac awaited updates anxiously, many assuming the delay would be chalked up to paranoid overreaction. Then one engineer, checking the valve system, paused. A sensor reading had flagged something irregular. As they opened part of the casing, they discovered it, a critical hidden fault in the fuel pressure system. Specifically, there was an unseen leak within the valve system of the left engine. A fault so minute it might not have been detected in standard pre-flight checks. But the implications of the leak were staggering. Had the flight proceeded as scheduled, fuel flow would have been disrupted in midair. The defect would have caused abnormal pressure buildup, culminating in a violent chain reaction. The lead mechanic later remarked on the severity of the issue, stating, "This plane would have gone up in flames 15 minutes into flight." The findings were met with silent shock. Engineers moved quickly to report the discovery, confirming that the fault was serious enough to warrant grounding the aircraft indefinitely. Information spread to the president's aides, their initial skepticism replaced with quiet disbelief. It wasn't just the fate of those on board that hung in balance. The loss of a presidential jet mid-flight would have devastated the entire nation, a blow that extended beyond politics to the very psyche of the people. Some began murmuring quietly among themselves, piecing together what had happened. It was undeniable now. The warnings that had seemed so bizarre, so misplaced, were entirely justified. For President Traoré, the stakes were clear. His own life and those of his closest team had been spared by narrowly heeding what many had dismissed as the ramblings of a madwoman. So why had he stopped to listen to her? Later accounts suggest it wasn't blind faith or chance. Traoré was known for a leadership style rooted in intuition and observation. He had seen in Dr. Zongo's frantic cries something deeper than panic. Whether it was the conviction in her voice, the knowledge she seemed to project, or the sheer fact that she had risked her life to run onto the runway, something had made him pause. The aftermath elevated Dr. Zongo from obscurity to national hero. Public sentiment shifted rapidly as news of her accuracy spread. Suddenly, the woman so many had cast aside wasn't just credible. She had become a figure of awe. She changed the day's narrative, exposing fault lines not only in an aircraft, but also in societal attitudes. Her intervention forced people to question who they trust and why. The president responded decisively, ordering not only repairs but inspections for all aircraft in the fleet. He also pushed for a deeper exploration of Zongo's story, asking how someone cast out by society could possess insights capable of saving lives. That runway disruption now stood as more than an isolated event. It challenged the nation to weigh the cost of overlooking voices perceived as unworthy or irrelevant. In its wake, the question lingered. How often do we dismiss the knowledge of those we've chosen not to understand? In that single moment on the runway, the course of an entire nation shifted. President Traoré's decision to listen to Dr. Mariam Zongo redefined what it means to value knowledge, regardless of its source. Her warnings, though unconventional, forced Burkina Faso to confront its own failures. A sobering reminder of the dangers in dismissing voices deemed unimportant. Lives were spared that day, but her story ripples far beyond one flight. How many others, silenced or ignored, hold truths we need to hear? Dr. Zongo's courage is a testament to the power of listening when it matters most. History, after all, listens back.